I think the other thing that's fascinating from rowing that you take with you is the debrief after a session. I love it. I used to love those debriefs. Like, you can have the worst session, it'll be down on one side the whole thing, and then like someone's gobbing off normally at 3 about where it is. So, and you get back in and everyone's fuming, and you stand around in that circle, and everyone gets a chance to go around and say, well, I think this was good, I think that was rubbish, I think it was your fault, and here's what I'm going to do better next time, here's what you're going to do better. But the best bit about it is when you walk away, that's it.
Yeah.
And you're upstairs and it's a cup of tea and banter, and you know, you carry on.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today, we're joined by the new director of the River and Row Museum, Mr. Steve O'Connor. Steve, please welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Oh, thanks for letting us come down here and do this here. It's incredible to set up in this room.
For our listeners, where are we?
Well, yeah, in Henley-on-Thames, in one of the halls of the newly refurbished River and Row Museum. We've got very, very original Model A Concept 2 row machine behind us, and all sorts of cool bits of equipment around here. But yeah, I guess the point of today is to talk about what's new here, what people could expect. We were talking before, we've been here a few times, but even still, there's so much that you just kind of grab. It's definitely taken us longer to set up today, to keep getting distracted by things.
Yeah.
So much cool stuff around here. But
yeah, we've got the history of the boat race. We've got obviously Olympic boats. We're gonna have medals soon from the Olympic Games, and also all sorts of like interesting rowing memorabilia. I think, what was it? World Rowing said that you guys have 35,000 items in your collection.
Yeah, so in total we've about 35,000. We've got around about 1,700 or so on display at the moment. So ergs and boats and bits and pieces you can see. We've got about another 5,000 or so objects like that in storage, and then the rest is all archive information. So all the newspapers and letters and bits and pieces. I just heard actually this morning we've got a letter that George Pocock wrote when he was on the a boat traveling from the US to Germany for Hitler's Games. And in the letter, he's talking about how he's really worried the eight's going to get damaged and what they're going to find on the other side when they get out. So yeah.
Is that the same games as the Boys in the Boat?
The Boys
film?
in the Boat film. Yeah.
Oh, awesome! I think that's that's quite relevant.
Yes.
As a topic now, so it will be cool to like see that as well.
coincidentally, 35,000 is about the number of all-in-ones that you've collected, isn't it?
Yeah, all of which we'll be able to see once we move into a studio and just hang it up.
Cool. So we'll get into the museum in a little bit, but I think, like you mentioned, you're kind of one of the first directors that's been involved in rowing. So kind of be interested to find out how you got into rowing in the first place, and then from there, kind of how you came here.
Yeah, I guess I'm a dyed-in-the-wool club rower. So I started at my school, but it was a state school in Nottingham called Beckett School. So it's one of the few schools then that rowed. So that was in the mid-90s. I just loved it. Like, I just loved being on the water, loved rowing. My brother had rowed before me, so he was at a place called Nottingham Britannia Rowing Club, which doesn't exist anymore. They had a bit of a reputation for sort of partying more than rowing, so it always looked good fun. And then, I joined my school, started rowing, joined Nottingham Union, and just loved it. Like, I still can't kick or catch a football to save my life. Yeah. So it was the only sport I was any good at. And then we went to local head races. Like Ancombe Head was my first race. We won that. Oh, this is great. This is easy. And so just like kept going and it was great. And then just carried on, rowed at Leeds University, coming out of uni, like worked around the country with different jobs, and just always joined the boat club. It's always like an easy way to get 50 mates straight away.
Yeah.
So rowed at like Bristol and Exeter and up in York for a bit. And then eventually settled in London and joined London Rowing Club. And so I did most of my sort of club competitive rowing there. So ended up being captain at London for a bit. And yeah, being involved in the squad and that sort of endless mission to try and win Henley, which never achieved myself, but was lucky enough to be in the squad when the squad won, and then was captain in 2011 when they won the Wifod. So
Awesome.
Yeah, so a proper club rower, I think I'd describe myself as.
So it's under your tutelage that London got some Henley wins. So
nothing to do with me. Like, I did a bit of admin in the background, but we were really lucky. We had Paul Reedy as our coach.
Okay.
So obviously he's a genius when it comes to coaching. So There's Paul, there's a little bit of Phil Bergignon, sort of, he started joining as I was leaving. And so, yeah, it's, when you're following Paul's program, like, you're assured of going quickly.
Yeah, that's Vicky St Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We met him at Putney Town High School.
Putney High.
Putney High,
yeah. And I think we're going in January. We'll be back at London fixing their own machines as well.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all captains would say that it's just a bit of admin that they did, but it's so much more than that. It's handling crises, it's putting out fires, and it's being someone that like all the club members can consult to and talk about, like when it comes to rowing and training. So give yourself a bit more credit than that.
Well, I think, funny enough, my sort of it's not a claim term that the opposite is, but like I've always been better at rowing admin than actually rowing, which is quite depressing, like thinking back on it. So I'd always, even as a junior, I was always doing something voluntary wise to try and push things along. So like career wise, I used to have a proper job working in marketing. I was working for a big agency in the city. I just hated it, and I was spending all my time doing rowing admin. So I was like, well, let's try and do it full time. Let's try and get a job coaching and see how we go from there. So yeah, rowing admin's always been like a big part of it.
Yeah.
And managed to make some money out of it, thankfully.
I love just looking at the numbers and seeing progression and all sorts of things.
I love you called it real job. Like, that's pretty much for me as well. Like, row gear and everything we do is just anything to not have a real job.
Yeah.
that's the aim. Yeah. I remember I once spoke Alex Gregory a couple of years after he'd finished as well. I said, "Oh, what are you doing now?" He said, "Like, absolutely anything that means I don't have to get a real job."
It's mad, isn't it? Yeah.
That's what we're all in for.
I think he's still doing that now.
But having said that, this does seem like quite a real job. What was the kind of progress to getting here?
Well, yeah, as I said, I sort of had a proper job in the city, doing a bit of marketing, and then probably sort of mid-20s-ish, I switched to being a full-time coach at Barn Elms, and that was all about coaching local schools. So the coaching I've done a bit of performance stuff at university level, but I enjoy coaching like boats to win stuff at races, but never loved it. But I really love coaching people when it's their first time rowing. Like, I love Learn to Row. I think it's brilliant. I love teaching it. Because I sort of struggle to get really motivated for someone that's really good at rowing and wants to go from fast to really fast. I get it, and I've been there, but I sort of, to leap out of bed and coach them, sort of, I find that a bit of a challenge. But for someone that is maybe scared of the water or has never sat in a boat before, and they do that first session and come back and say, "I love it," and they're definitely back for the next session. Like, I live for that. I think that's brilliant.
The progress is massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We talked before. Yeah, elite rowers. If you take 2 seconds off your 2K time in a year, you've done a great job. Whereas, like, with new ones, you can take them taking minutes.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's so nice to see. And yeah, we said this. We've coached a lot of novices as well, and I think if you love the sport, you want to see someone else love the sport. So
Yeah,
like
exactly
that point of like seeing someone when they start coming to you, like, "Do you reckon we could do another set? We could do some more training," and you're like, "I've got them."
Yeah, they caught the bite.
That light bulb moment of when someone rows on a weekend, they're like, "Could we fit in 2 sessions on a Saturday?" Like, yes, you can. Welcome. You're now in the sport.
Open the door.
Yeah. So coached at Barn Elms. Loved coaching, but then after 5 years there, I was like, oh, kind of don't want to be at Barn Elms forever coaching. So then the opportunity came along to set up Fulham Reach Boat Club. So there was a big development built just next to where the old Riverside Studios are by Hammersmith Bridge. Mm-hmm. And the developer there, in the planning permission, they had to put a community boat club in. So they put the advert out and said, "Can we have a consultant to come in and write the plans, for this boat club?" So I got that job, having run London and done the sort of numbers of a grown-up job, and then had experience in the sport. So got the job to write the plan for Fulham Reach, and then ended up opening it back in 2013. And again, it was real grassroots focus. Like, how do we get lots of kids from state schools on the water was sort of the basic plan when we opened the doors, and then it has grown into this wild beast that's on the water today.
Yeah, it's doing really well. Yeah, it's grown really quickly. As I said, I would only think that it's opened 10 years ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's been interesting as well to document it in a time of social media. So I've got the photos up there of like the day I was given the keys. So literally I had a pair of keys. No boats, no staff. We even still had the wrap on the window, so you couldn't see out the place, and just kind of told to get on with it. And then, with the backing of the developer initially, and then the fundraising coming on board, we ended up with, I think when I left, we had over 40 boats, a couple of thousand people a year going rowing, a team of about 30 between the management staff and the coaches. So it's great. It was great fun to run it, and it really showed that there's demand for rowing there. We just got to tap into it in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. That's like small. It's like you said. There's this untapped resource. There's a limited limited avenues for people to get into rowing, and I think that's a big thing now. Like I'm going to talk hopefully with Kath Bishop, who's running the Love Rowing thing, which it's like the British rowing. It's like the charity arm of British rowing, and a couple other people. I think that's really interesting. But like you said, it's just like the most rewarding bit of it.
And there's no shortage of people in London, so they might as well row instead of being the thousands or 2,000 footballer from their neighbourhood.
Yeah, and it's funny. I thought when I started Fulham, I imagined that all my rower mates would just up sticks and come and join, and that was basically written in the plan. Like we'll get 80% of our members will know how to row, and it'd be great. They can just take boats and go out and paddle, and like it didn't happen. And it really reinforced to me how tribal people are about their clubs. So pretty quickly we could see that people weren't joining. So we had to rewrite the plan as like, right, well, we're just going to have to teach everyone. But what that meant was we opened our horizons much wider because we could now go for anybody. If they'd never rowed before, it didn't matter. So we started pitching ourselves against local gyms. So we started offering one-to-one sessions like you get on a PT, but you do it on the water. So same price. So we charged someone back in the day, I think we do 50 quid an hour to come row with us. Didn't have to be a member, didn't have to join British Rowing. Yeah, just walking off the street, sign the forms, and out you go with a coach. And so yeah, from there we really grew that sort of grew that base of people that had never rowed before into this 150 odd membership, which is cool. It's good fun.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail. The tribe thing, that's what attracts people to it. Like this is my thing. This is my gang. Wherever we find ourselves, having a coffee or on a beer. We're always talking about rowing, like
it's my club, my colours, my blazer, my tie, my socks. Like, get away! I don't want to change it.
Yeah. No, I think that's part of it. So yeah, you can tap into that, and I think that's quite powerful. And yeah, that's cool. So then moving on to here, how did you get involved in this, or like?
Yeah, so this came about. There's a couple of reasons really. So one, Fulham just started feeling like the right time to move on. So sort of led it through COVID. We'd come out of COVID and we were kind of getting back to normal. We were in all right shape. And we were starting to think about all the problems we had pre-COVID, post-COVID. So I was like, okay, we'll kind of draw a line under that now, and we're back to normal. So I was sort of thinking, well, it's 10 years now. What's next? I don't want to be the Fulham guy forever. I see a theme here. I don't want to be the Barn Elms guy forever. I don't want to be the Fulham guy forever.
There's a limit to how much you can stamp your mark on
exactly.
it. Yeah,
Exactly. But it was it just felt like the right time. Is about as good as I can explain it. And then at the same time, I knew the guys that were running this place, and we were just talking about running charities, and they said, well, we're going to advertise for a director. And really what drew me to it is the challenge, because it's never made money. It's been shut for a while they reinvested in the fabric of the building and the infrastructure behind it. And basically, I've been a bit like I'm giving Fulham Reach, told to get on with it. I've been kind of been given the keys to this place and told to get on and help it operate in the black. So that's, like all rowers, you love a challenge. So it's really exciting, a bit daunting. But I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we could do it. So yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, any challenge can seem daunting if you look at the whole picture. We were speaking with Lebby Ayres, who has rowed across the Atlantic a couple of years ago. She said, like, it's a 3,000-mile long race. If you think about the fact that you have 3,000 miles to row the entire ocean, it's going to be very, very hard to get motivated. But like, if you just think, okay, I just got to like sit here and do 2 hours, and then the journey kind of like is broken down into pieces. I think with even with a massive behemoth task that you've got here of making this museum successful, eventually once you start ticking off the objectives, it will be like dominoes, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything will fall into place.
And it's that thing you get from rowing and from doing a structured training program. It's amazing how transferable that is into the real world and into business in particular. And I really notice it when you're around people that haven't rowed. Even to this morning, like with the team, we were talking about what the rough numbers are looking like for the next 3 years. And the last number compared to the number of this year is massively different in terms of the income we need to generate. And you kind of feel people rock back a bit like, Lime, I'm not sure. But I just exactly that. Just, well, hang on, if we just hypothetically, if you break it down, all the different income streams we've got, and then we backpedal 3 years to where we are now, can you see that transition happening? They're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, There we go. So that's one ticked off, and let's carry on down the spreadsheet and do that for all of them.
Yeah, you got to break it down exactly, like you said, like transferable skills. This is something we've talked about before, and I definitely love. Like, there's so much of rowing teaches you. Even if, however successful you are in rowing, you still keep all those tools and you take them on. And it's funny. I was talking to another friend who's in the business world, and having spent a long time in the rowing world, struggling with people who aren't turning up on time and aren't turning up to the interview and don't really seem that bothered. And he was like really kind of struggling with it. And, we talked, and it's just like, you've got too used to being around people who are super motivated, super driven, happy to have that delayed gratification, to work those small steps towards a goal. So that's cool. It's cool to be around.
I think there's two elements in that. I think that one, as the person in charge, you've got to set that standard.
Yeah.
And you've got to not be afraid to stick to it. Yeah. So if someone's underperforming, you've got to get into them and figure out how to help them and bring them round and do all you can. Then it's the old, like, quiet word in the ear, then it's coaching, then it's a slightly firmer word in the ear. And then at some point, you've got to decide, well, actually, the organisation's doing this and you're doing this. And it's really unfortunate. But you've got to get in there and try and help people to get up to that standard. And as person in charge, it's great. Like, you've got the gift that you can set that standard and people have to rise to it. I think the other thing that's fascinating from rowing that you take with you is the debrief after a session. Like, I love it. I used to love those debriefs. Like, you can have the worst session, it'll be down on one side the whole thing, and then like someone's gobbing off, normally at 3, about where it is. So, and you get back in and everyone's fuming, and you stand around in that circle, and everyone gets a chance to go around and say, well, I think this was good, I think that was rubbish, I think it was your fault, and here's what I'm going to do better next time, here's what you're going to do better. But the best bit about it is, when you walk away, that's it.
Yeah.
And you're upstairs and it's a cup of tea and banter and you carry on. And I think like that works. It works really well. And then that you can draw a line under it, you can switch off, but then at the next session you're going to switch on again. And that, like, we need that here as well. Like, and I think bosses need to be able to give feedback, and they need to teach people how to give feedback. And people need to learn how to receive feedback and understand that it's not a personal attack. It's that we all have this ambition over here that we're trying to move towards. And you've got to be prepared to call it out if you see it.
The beautiful thing about what you're saying is that you never will let the problems grow out of proportion, because you just keep hashing them out early as they arise, and we keep tackling them and we keep talking about what needs to change. So then they never become too much of an issue down the line. So, you can like really get ahead of any issues that can be identified.
Comms, it's all about comms.
Oh, definitely.
It's all comms. The email, the smouldering email. Like, if someone's annoyed and they fire off that snarky email, like I've stamped that out here straight away. It's like, if you're annoyed, you have to go and talk to the person.
Yeah.
It's like, if they're saying great job, like, email it to everyone. But if you're upset, like, your email is going to be received badly, whichever way you think you're presenting it. So just go and talk to them, and it's never as bad as you think then.
Yeah, I think that's, again, from sport, it's the common goal is the thing. Like you said, here is a common goal to improve, but in sport it's really easy to see that common goal. We're here to win Henley. You're not moving fast enough. I'm going to shout at you or whatever. Shout at you, but we're gonna do criticism. I always looked at it with rowing, like, any athletes that can't take criticism, you're not going to progress. Like, if you can't take it, you just won't be able to progress.
We used to talk about it as being coachable. You've got to be coachable.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to mold what you're doing, and understand that feedback is not an attack. It's trying to make you better.
Yeah. Cool. So when you got here, the challenge, how was it? Exactly what you thought it was? Was it completely different?
I think it's not a surprise to say that I think I knew what I was walking into.
Yeah.
I think when you see the numbers in the cold light of day, it's always a little bit of a moment. I think, to be fair to this place, it's struggled from a lack of a permanent director for quite a while. So that's been a really interesting thing to watch happen and play out. So when I got here, the team felt really siloed. So you'd have your your marketing person sat over here, your front of house team over here, your creators over here, someone dealing with the roof over here, and there wasn't one person tying them all together. So you can see, again, back to comms, or the comms starts breaking down then. And when I first got here, it was fascinating to walk around and be like, so what's talk to people and go like, what's your objectives? What are you working towards? And they'd be like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, and who's your line manager then? So who's leading you through that? And they're like, I don't know. So I'm like, so when you come to work, are you just kind of coming to work and do some stuff and going home? It's like, cool, okay. So I thought what I'd do when I got here was have some time to bed in, write this lovely plan for 3 years and then slowly work with the team. Actually, when I got here, I was like, okay, here's an interim plan. So like within the first few weeks, we had an interim strategy to see us through the next 3 months, an interim structure. And that sort of got us going to the point where now I'm just about to finish the plan for the next 3 years and we can publish that. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock to see that when I got here. But the good side of that is everyone's reacted really well to it. Because I think actually people want to be led generally. And so to have that happen quickly, I think was good for the team. People seem to react well to it. They seem to be reacting well. Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise to get here and see that.
Yeah. And then in terms of kind of, like what the plan is with this thing, obviously we're sort of thinking, like you said, we've both been here a couple of times and there's probably some people who are like, oh, I've been there, I've seen that. So what's the kind of plan moving forward to try and make sure that, there's always going to be something here that people come and see?
Well, that in itself is part of the plan. So yeah, give people a reason to come back. The strategy has one ultimate aim, which is to operate back in the black. But the real trick in the strategy is mapping out how we get there. So there's 4 key things we're going to do, which we keep talking about, which is being centre of the community, redo the galleries, so everything we see here will be completely redesigned, lead the debate on healthy rivers, and have a world-leading education product. So if we do those 4 things, we think we'll start edging towards it. But then within each of those, you've got multiple different goals and tasks we've got to do. So one of those things exactly is more events, more updated galleries, more reasons for people to come back here time and time again. So like I was saying earlier, we had the Living Advent calendar, which is something that Henley runs. We had that in here on Friday night. And it's amazing. We had over 100 people downstairs, loads of rowers from Leander turned up, loads of like people from the town you wouldn't normally see. There was free gin cocktails going on. Like, it's amazing. It's a really cool event. And so many people there were saying, God, I haven't been here before. And like, how can you A, live in Henley, B, be in rowing and not come to the River and Row Museum in your hometown? But that's our fault. That's not happening because it hasn't been that engaging or interesting for people to come to. So we've got to think of new and exciting ways to inspire people who know about the sport and about the river and about the town. But equally think about those people that don't and give them reasons to come here in the same way that you go to other museums or visitor attractions and see what they're up to.
Yeah, I think one challenge for you, but also one really cool thing about this, it's not just one thing. Like you said, it's a rowing museum, it's a river museum, it's a museum on Henley. So that's exciting from the point of, like, there's a lot to do when you get here. Like, if you go to an art gallery and you're not really that into art, like, we're kind of interested in it. Whereas here, you've got the rowing and things to interest you, but also some really cool art based around rowing. And like, we saw some in the gallery over there. So I think like that's really interesting to get people down here. But I should imagine that's also you kind of having to like work to 4 different audiences.
Yeah, that's true. And plus also you've got conference room, you've got a place where you can like host events, you've got a cafe where people can come, possibly take their laptop and start working. It's just got really lovely surroundings. It's like we're right next to the river, so if you wanted to take a break from your work, you could go down to the river, 30-second walk. You've got a gift shop that's got full of like attractions to do with Henley. So if anyone wants to give someone a Henley gift, come here. There's like not a better place to do that. So there's loads and loads of avenues. So it's like really exciting to like see how this place is going to evolve and what this museum will look like specifically post Paris as well.
Yes, yeah. And the thing I kept getting told when I got announced in the role, so I got announced in January, I didn't start until July, was the 2 words were challenge and opportunity. So there was people in the sport who I know who would be like, oh, you've got the job, congratulations. Massive opportunity, huge challenge. And I just kept hearing that for 6 months. And they're right. So every time we say, blimey, we haven't got many people coming in here, or the galleries look a bit stale and all that. It's like, well, the opportunity is we can run amazing events because of all those things we've got in place here. And we can redesign this gallery and reimagine how we tell all these stories. And like, think about the boat race. Like, there's so many things we can do for the boat race. There's so much immersive tech we can bring in to really engage the visitors. But it's a massive opportunity. And there's a lot of things that we haven't got in place, which we will, that will just kind of bring us up to where we should be, like the bar. So for example, we haven't got an online shop yet. We'll get an online shop. We're just about to launch online ticketing, which we hadn't had before. But then we'll go beyond that. It's like, well, actually, we'll delve into that shop and what else can we sell that appeals to certain segments of our visitors? Can we have a travelling exhibition? Can we go up to National Waterfall Centre, Strathclyde Park? Can we talk about rowing up there? There's all sorts we can be doing. So it's really exciting, but it is, as you say, it's effectively 3 museums in one. So it's a little bit of a challenge as well to try and map it all out.
Absolutely. And also, like, as the rowing calendar like moves on, like there's different races that pop up at like each different stage of the year. You've got the boat race, you've got Henley, you've got things like trials, etc. So like, even if you were looking for like recurring customers, like people could come at different stages of the year to like learn different parts of like the rowing world and like what makes the culture in the UK as well. So I'm really excited to like see what will be brought out.
I think the river one is interesting because we're one of the only, if not the only, museum in the UK dedicated to the river. Okay. So I think there's a real opportunity there, is that word again, for us to lead that debate on what a healthy river looks like, and not necessarily take a hugely political view. Mm-hmm. Clearly we want it clean and we want biodiversity going on, but I think our sort of skill and what we can bring to the table is to be the platform that everyone gathers around to have the debate. I've got a great vision of Thames Water and all the local environmental groups downstairs, like hashing it out to figure out what the solutions are. And I think the museum's really well placed, both sort of, you know, metaphorically in the space and physically where we are, to be that sort of organisation that can tie it all together.
I saw a crazy statistic that said something like 90% of UK rivers are like in an unhealthy state, like too polluted. It's not what it should be. So I think it's definitely much needed that we battle the river health, and then we try and like help it improve. Like there are companies like Aquascope, which is Andrew Trix Hodge works there. There's companies like, I think the Rivers Trust, where Imogen Grant is now an ambassador. So I think if you could spawn all of those companies and have them, like you said, battling out downstairs, I think that would be brilliant.
It's definitely front and center right now. I saw it a lot from lockdown because there was not a lot you could do, and there was a lot of people going open water swimming, especially in Oxford where we're based, and like there's a lot more conversation happening about it, obviously, in terms of like the environment and people looking after it. Like it's a really cool time to have that space and be able to like change it now. So I think maybe like five years ago people weren't as interested, but things like paddleboarding and just general use of the river I think has gone up. I don't know if people like statistics and stuff, but like there's a lot more ways to get on the river, and there's a lot more reason to want it cleaner.
And I think we've got to be slightly nuanced in our approach, because I'm always quite practical with this sort of stuff, and like, well, what's the solution? Like, yes, we want it clean, but what next? Like, how do we get it clean? And ultimately it comes down to massive investment in the infrastructure of managing wastewater. Because from the water company side, and Thames Water down here, ultimately they're dealing with a Victorian system that isn't designed to cope with A, the amount of people, or B, the amount of industry that's gone on around the river. So there's a lot more concrete, for example, so it's a lot easier for water to slide off into the waterway rather than get absorbed into the ground. So you have to work with the water companies, I think, in order to find a solution to clean the river up. So I think there's a lot of people shouting at the moment about how bad it is, and they're right, but we've got to start now, I think, moving forward into what's the next step and how do we actually solve it.
It's another lesson from Rowan we talked about before is Morgan Byron Williams said they were having in those debriefs quite a lot of negative. I didn't like this, didn't like this. They made a rule in the crew, was like, don't bring me a negative unless you've got a solution. Yeah. And I think that's very easy to say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Okay, but what? Well, I don't know what to do. Well, yeah, no one knows what to do. That's if it was easy, we'd have fixed it. But yeah, that's one of those things. Yeah, you can talk about it a lot, and then it's talking about doing stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's not going to be something that just gets fixed overnight. Yeah.
And even if it gets fixed, once it gets fixed, then what's next? Like you said, because a lot of people will like look at a goal and think, okay, I just need to get up to this stage, achieve this. Okay, but what's going to happen after? Because there needs to be a plan as well.
And in terms of this side, like into like you've got like the coolest stuff here. Like you know, I've been here before, but you've got Redgrave Sydney for the pair behind you is from 2012. Like all the memorabilia and stuff in it, the sliding rigger single and all these kind of things. Yeah, I'm an absolute geek of rowing. It's kind of accidental geek of rowing. Like I never set out to be it, but in the pursuit of being as good as I can, you look at all the different ways. But yeah, I think like everything you've got here is absolutely incredible. And like you said, the exciting thing is like modernizing the way that you do that. You know, you bring that to people, like changing, like we were, you know, talking about changing the way that stuff's presented in order to make it easier. Yeah, absolutely right. You should come and see our storage unit. There's some bizarre boats over there. I'll never leave. We've got this. I put it on LinkedIn. There's a single that's got it's got an inverted V-shaped bow and stern, and a normal shape in the middle. So like, I don't know how on earth it got around corners, because both edges are digging into the water. Like
I can't say how it'll be done. But anyway,
Wow.
I'd like to sneak it onto the water at some point without telling the curators. But yeah, no, I think looking around some of the exhibits we've got here, like you're exactly right that the tech is a really good way of how we can bring it all to life. So we've got the boat race display over there, which if you come in now is nice. We've got some interesting things. We've got the original letter on display that started the boat race, so the first challenge. We've got the coin that they use to do the coin toss every year.
Wow.
We have that here. And we shortly, hopefully, we'll work with the boat race to display their trophies outside of the races themselves.
Yeah.
But then I think we've got to do more to bring the whole story to life. So you could have those things, redo that display, but then also, wouldn't it be great if we've got this immerse you interactive immerse you row, so you can actually sit on the boat race course and have a go. Or could we film a boat race with 360 cameras and put the goggles on, and you could cock the start of the boat race and see what the clashing is all about? Like, so doing that starts to bring it to life for people that would love it if you're in the sport, because you know what clashing is all about. But equally, if you're not in the sport, that'd be amazing to sit in there and feel what it's like.
Absolutely. Plus, boat race itself carries so many like statistics with the race. So the boat race contains a few bridges on its course, and then obviously there are statistics that like whichever crew is past a certain bridge first, then they're more likely to win, etc. So like obviously those statistics we spoke with some Oxford and Cambridge athletes, they carry a lot of weight, especially like in athletes' heads as they race, etc. It will be like really brilliant to actually also like do some data analytics and see how that all comes out and be able to present that. So then, you know, once people have visited the museum and then they watch the boat race the next year, they're like, oh, okay, I know what's going to happen, the odds of this, or maybe the probability here and there. It's just also like what you take out after a trip to the museum. Like what do you learn, rather than also just look at a few things, go out and then just completely forget about the experience. Like I think with what you've got here, you can easily create a story that, you know, will stick with people, and like they will feel really that they've gained something and they've learned something like once they've been here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've got to think about what we want people to feel when they leave. And like, how on earth do you measure that? It's really difficult. But we should always be thinking like that. So we talked about the river. So we should get people to feel that there is an issue at the moment, but equally there's something that can be done, and there's hope, and there's actions they can take to help solve it. Rowing's a great one. What do we want people to feel about rowing when they leave here? I think one of the things you want them to feel is just how flipping hard rowing is. Because people, when you see it from the outside, you don't really get it, and you don't get the people like bleeding from the eyeballs from about the first 400 meters of a race till the last 106 minutes later. The boat race data is really interesting. So, you know, I know the guys that are working on that, and we can now see the heart rates of the athletes when they're racing. And that's fascinating. I think if we could bring in a story like that to life here, to try and understand to someone, like if you sit at 180 for 16 minutes, like that's really hard. It's probably not that healthy for you either.
Probably not.
But we're trying to get people to understand just what that feeling is like, of how hard a race is. I mean, maybe we have ergs and we give people challenges to have a go, and they can start to feel it.
Make them do a 2K.
Yeah,
so everyone who comes is going to have to do a 2K.
Can't leave, doors are locked. 2K.
I think what would be cool is to show also like how buoyant the boats are.
Yeah.
Because you could watch rowing from a distance and you think, oh, okay, that looks cool. But then the boats are super light. They're very like unstable. It takes quite a lot of skill to be able to like balance and center these things. So possibly if there was maybe like a boat simulator as well, where people could actually get to like see just how hard it is to like sit still in a single.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be brilliant, because again, people don't understand how tippy these boats are until you've sat in one, particularly singles. But leading on from that is one thing we'd like to do in the future is have some sort of river bolt on to the experience here. So you can see all this about rowing and think, wow, I'd really like to have a go. And then we've got a boat ready that can take you out and sort of merge what I was doing at Fulham with this place and get people on the water.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I guess like you said, like you have people who know about rowing. Like for me, like I love to come and see all this stuff, but then you also want to be accessible to people who have no knowledge of it and like build it all from here. And getting on the water, I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we often had that in Fulham. You know, we were dealing with we had 1,300 states called Kiziego rowing, so huge numbers, and you're constantly trying to work out what's the most efficient way to get those numbers through. Inevitably, it always came back to, let's use the erg. Like, we'll get them all on the erg, and we'll intro them on the erg, and then we'll go on the water. And I am yet to see anybody sit on an erg and be inspired to go rowing. Like, you inspire people by sitting them on the water and pushing them off.
Yeah.
And then they fall in love with the sport and want to come back. And then the erg becomes a tool they use to get better at rowing. But the inspiration happens out on the water, not on the rowing machine.
Well, that's really funny. Like in Poland, you can't really row in the months of between November and April because all the water's frozen because of all the winter. So actually, I started rowing in January. I didn't get out on the water until May. So my first 5 months of rowing was just the ergo, and I loved it. People were like, "Wait until you get on the water; it gets so much better." I was like, "Better? What do you mean? I love this already."
Oh, there you go.
But then I got on the water, and then yeah.
So any athlete you coaching that enjoys the erg, you're like, he's gonna. When we get out there, he's gonna love it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So also, you can't really talk about rowing without talking about the Olympics, especially from a British perspective. And you showed us again, we walked around that you've got a plan for Paris.
Yeah, so we're going to have a temporary display in to talk about the links between Henley and the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So we're calling it Olympic Henley. So,
love that.
The genius to work out. It's actually, just to flick back to museums for a second, it's been really interesting to figure out how you program stuff that happens in a museum. Mm-hmm. Because normally you'd have a programming manager and you'd have team meetings and get around, and we haven't really got any of that infrastructure. So we are just kind of trying stuff. And so I'm having to use my sort of creative side, which I've haven't used in sort of GCSE art. So so it's been interesting trying to come up with the ideas for it. But yeah, so we're going to have Olympic Henley. And it's talking about the fact that Henley hosted the games in 1908 and 1948. And we're going to talk about the athletes that took part in it. And we've got the double hanging up there. Is it double? Sorry, the pair that hanging up there that raced in 48 and got a gold. And then we're going to concentrate on athletes that have taken part. So Sir Steve is hopefully going to give us his 5 golds so we can put them on display. And then we're also going to have a talk given hopefully by Sir David Tanner, which will talk about GB's path to Olympic and Paralympic success. Because it's a fascinating time from the Atlanta Games forward. So obviously in Atlanta, Great Britain's only Olympic gold medal of the entire Games came from Redgrave and Pinsent in the pair, which is incidentally we have downstairs in the cafe hanging up. But that was the time the lottery funding kicked in. And so David then was involved and was really sort of the architect behind all of the wins. And to think from 96 where we won 1 gold medal across the entire team, we now have dominated men's, women's and Paralympic rowing, but also GB as a country, kids these days will see us 3rd or 4th in the medal table and kind of think, oh, okay, that's about right. Not knowing that we were battling it out with South Korea back in the day, and it's a massive turnaround. So the Olympic exhibition will look to really highlight that and pick up all the other athletes around the town that have raced at the games. Obviously a big focus on rowing, but we'll try and see who else we can get involved. So it'll run for 2 months. It'll run during the Henley week, which would be great. So we'll try and get people up here, give people a reason to come when they're not racing, to come and see it all. And yeah, just showcase all that the Olympics is about and try and tell the new audience.
Yeah, I love the backstory. That's a lot of what we do here. Even people I rode with or I know, it's so interesting to kind of just go back and see the path, the origin story, as it were.
Yeah.
It's not quite as exciting as Marvel, but yeah, no, I find that really interesting, and just seeing, like you said, what goes into it to show. It's so easy just to look at a pair moving, how elegant and smooth and effortless it looks, and to think that for a 6-minute race, most people put more than 4 years, but probably more like 8 or 10 years of their life into this 6-minute race. So
even for Henley Regatta, I think when in your winning year, I think one of your crewmates has calculated how many training sessions or how many K you did per every stroke you took in that final.
Yeah, we worked out it was about 18 kilometers of rowing per stroke we took in the final,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I find fascinating about going back to club rowing. It's a hobby effectively. When you I understand you're training full time and trying to be on that precipice between winning Henley and the squad and on that pathway. But before I was doing, I've got a job and I've got rent and stuff, and this is what I do for fun. But even we were training 12 times a week at some point with a full time job. And you think I don't know any other amateur sport where you do that. You do that level of training, and all our annual leave was used up on training camps and Henley week. And that was it. And the number of weddings I missed and christenings and whatever else. And yeah, I always look back and think, what was I thinking? But then I wouldn't change it because it's all those memories you've got and all that cool stuff you went on to achieve, and you're pushing yourself outside of work to achieve this goal with a bunch of other people. I joined London in 06. But before that, I was rowing at clubs from senior clubs from 2000 onwards, and I've still got great mates from them because you sort of forge those friendships in the adverse times. But yeah, I always find it fascinating how much work goes in to club rowing when it's just club rowing. And on the outside, like, your mates don't really care if you win a Henley medal or not. Like, no one knows what you're talking about. But it means so much when you're in it.
Yeah, we talked about that before, about, rowing being your whole life. But when you have to do it 14, 16 times a week, it is your whole life, and everything else revolves around it.
There is an opportunity cost, yeah.
Even at school level, you school kids training 10, 12 times. I remember when I was at school, my coach was saying, I don't think there's any other school sports that train this hard.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but it's what it takes. Although I'd say at the same time, like, there probably is a bit more knowledge in terms of training coming in now.
Yeah.
There's probably a few more. I mean, New Zealand have been pretty good at, like, following the up-to-date sort of knowledge in terms of, like, how hard you work. Maybe you can work a bit harder but for not as long, and things like that. So, like, things, I mean, you can't really train any harder anymore. Like, it's not like you said with a business, you all your holiday is your rowing. Even like the national athletes, if they're funded, they're already training 2-3 times a day. Like, you can't do any more of that. So it's the other stuff that becomes exciting.
Yeah.
This is the thing, like, the landscape of the sport has shifted so much in the last 30 years in particular, like, pretty much since the Atlanta games, since those games that you mentioned. Like, rowing has become, like, more professional as a sport, and, like, it wasn't always training 16 times a week, doing like 80 or 100 plus K a week on the water. So it's like, it's really easy to look at a point and just think, okay, well, we're here, but how do we get here? And to tell that story of, like, how rowing has evolved and, like, how it's changed. Like, obviously there's like a display Tom was showing me in the museum here where you've got, like, a decked rowing.
Yes.
So there's like different heights, and rowing was used as a mode of transportation back in the day, and, like, then for about 200 years there's been the Oxford College rowing system where they have the bumps regatta, etc., and then the evolution into the Olympic rowing into what it is now. I think that's really fascinating, and also, like, it's probably not something that many people think about, because it's just, especially people who aren't involved with rowing, like you said, to them, it doesn't matter if you win a Henley medal or not. They'll just switch on the TV when the Olympics are there, and they'll think, oh, they're just moving the boat on the water. Okay. But, like, no one really, like, takes the time to think about, like, how do we get here? And, like, what challenges, like, what kind of sacrifices do you also need to, like, put into place in order to even be able to compete or, like, have a shot at the medal at those types of events?
And it's interesting, isn't it? That sort of, you callous your hands. David Goggins talks about this, doesn't he? But you callous your mind as well. Like, you do hard things. And that stays with you. Like, you learn to push yourself into uncomfortable places. And it's definitely something as a club rower, I've definitely got a bit of that. Like, I'm quite happy just grinding it out, for want of a better phrase, and that probably sums up my rowing career. But I think it's a really important skill. Like, it takes a lot for rowers generally to give up. And on an erg, even in a race in particular, you don't stop. Like, you keep going until something makes you stop. And I think it's an interesting one for rowing as a sport. I tell this story sometimes. So I went to school with a chap called Jermaine Jenis. So he played football for England, and he was a year below me at school. And I didn't know him particularly well, but I think what was interesting was at sixth form, the two year groups would do PE together. So we go and play football, and I would watch Jermaine score goals, and then an hour later the teacher would blow the whistle and we go in. So, like, my team's won and I've done nothing but just get cold and, like, watch him score. But the fascinating thing in rowing, and what we worked a lot on Fulham around teaching the kids on this, was in this boat, if you back off, I lose. Or if I back off, you lose. So I'm pushing myself into an uncomfortable place for your success, because I don't want to deal with the fact that you might lose if I stop. And again, there's not many sports that teach that.
Absolutely.
And I think if you can get, particularly at the junior level, if you can get kids to get that is a lesson that stays with you forever.
One of the assistant directors for the Boys in the Boat film that's coming out soon, he said that one of the first things he said to the guys when they started training for a few weeks before they even, like, got to filming, he was like, rowing is the ultimate team sport. Everyone has to do exactly the same thing at the same time with the same level of exertion, perfectly in sync, or otherwise the boat doesn't move.
Yeah.
It really is the ultimate team sport in that regard.
It's not like football, if one guy doesn't show up, you can still play a game. But, like, in rowing, if someone doesn't show up,
Exactly
you're not
right.
going out. It's not happening.
You learn to get out of bed.
Yeah,
Like, that's another lesson. Like 5 a.m, it's not great, but it's not that difficult. Just get your feet out of bed and then get going.
There's plenty of times where you're right. The motivation to not let your mates down is a lot stronger than not letting yourself down.
Way stronger. Way. And I think also you'll see those times over the years. You'll have that one crew where it clicks and it's just a feeling like nothing else. And then you'll have that one crew where it really does. I mean, I've been in boats where their fire's broken out mid-session, like, and you're just like, well, it's like, well, this is interesting. Like, so you learn a lot about working as part of a team, I think, in the sport.
Yeah, definitely. But also the challenge thing, when in later life, I talked about it before again, but like I deal with life better because I've rowed, and I deal with challenges better. And even when something difficult comes up, you're like, well, I've overcome difficult things before. Mm-hmm. You can kind of sidestep the emotion of it and just kind of get straight into like, how can I fix this?
Yeah. Well, there's not many things that are harder than the third 500.
Yeah, exactly.
I was watching some reality TV show with my wife, and I was just amazed at how the smallest thing comes up, and just, they were working in teams and one of their friends gets knocked out, and all of a sudden, like, they just can't deal with it, and people are crying and throwing tantrums and you're just like,
adults.
I just can't, because and then to be fair, like, maybe they haven't done a sport like rowing that's kind of taught you those things.
And I think there's something to be said in that as well about being physically active. It does just chill you out a lot more, and there's some science behind it, which I've heard, like I've half listened to at some point, but it's the idea that if your brain is working hard to, let's say, outrun a tiger or go for a jog as we do these days, it's not then that worried or sweating the small stuff that would otherwise trouble you. Yeah. And if you're not pushing yourself and being physically active, then your tiger becomes that angry email or whatever else it is. So I think you row at a high level and you row hard and you spend a lot of time, and then when you stop, I think the trick is to stay not at that level, but to stay consistent in some sort of training so that you maintain that level of let's not sweat the small bits.
To be able to show that and introduce new people to the sport, to show them like how much they stand to gain, that things that they wouldn't even imagine. Like when I started rowing, I didn't imagine it would take me here to where I am today, and like it's brilliant. And I just hope so many more people can learn about the sport, what it can do for them, and just how fantastic it is. Because like we're not doing it because we hate it, we're here because we love the sport.
I never thought I'd be doing this.
But I think that's really exciting for rowers, certainly. I know that we've had a lot of people are interested in working with us or having us because we're kind of in the sport. We're rowers, for rowers by rowers, and I think that's a really interesting thing for people to know now, is that it's one of us in charge, like you said. But in the past, maybe it wasn't. It was more of a museum with some rowing things in, whereas now, like you said, like you really have that kind of mindset, and I think that's going to make it really interesting, sort of how these things are presented. Because the same thing, like we've spoken before about Rory Cruikshank, who does the new
that's
one. It's like, or the new photography company. We spoke to him, and he's talking about how there were photographers that did it, but it weren't necessarily rowers. They didn't sort of work out how to get the best shots or what works best and all this kind of things. And his business has really developed because he has that knowledge of photography, but also knowledge of rowing. And I think in order to do it, you need both. And I think with this, you've got the museum and the knowledge of the museum, and then the knowledge of the rowing, and I think that's kind of what can take it up.
There's always been a bit of a tension with this place. You've got a museum about the town of Henley, and then a museum about rowing and the river, and those two things have always pulled against each other. And so part of my job is to actually bind them together and be like, well, actually, we're a museum with 3 topics we're going to talk about. But I feel well placed to do that because I've got rowing experience. I've been on the river since I was a kid, and I like yourselves, I paddleboard in it, I swim in it, and I take my kids in the river. But I live in Henley as well, so I'm able to speak to all the groups because I genuinely live and breathe, the subject matter of the museum. So it's making it it's making that bit easy for me to be able to have those conversations.
That's good.
There's something to be said also about like hiring rowers, because like exactly that they're going to turn up, they're disciplined, they work hard, they don't stop until the job's done, they don't stop when they're tired, certainly. Who were we talking to? Was it Jeff from Hampton? He said that when he started like his boat repairing company in South Africa, the first thing he did was hire rowers. Because at least he knew what he was going to get. Exactly, there's some form of there's like a reliability badge that comes from like being involved with the sport.
It's a small world as well. It's a small community. as I laugh, people say, the whole world is 6 degrees of separation. I think rowing in the UK is 1.
Yeah,
If you don't
exactly.
know a rower, you will both know someone else.
100%.
It's really small, and we've done. My company's been around a while. I've done really well from just word of mouth, and people talking and do a good job and impress a few people. They'll go and talk to some other people, and it's like a real small world. So word gets around quite quickly, which is cool.
And also, like, if you were to hire someone who's not a rower, the first thing you do is teach them about rowing. So you might as well stick to rowing anyway. Don't let everyone disappear into some corporate offices once they finish their career. I think it'll be really cool to keep the community and keep the pack going, and just sort of stick together as a unit, which is again something that hopefully we can achieve with this podcast as well, and be able to spread the knowledge about all the different aspects. And I think it's brilliant that we get to sit down with someone like yourself to discuss obviously such an important aspect of the sport, which is its history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see. I think British Rowing started doing this, getting the British team alumni. I think they're now tracking who's actually rowed for Great Britain.
Yeah, I heard this. Yeah, so the British Olympic Association gives everyone who's been to the Olympics a number. You have a number, and British Rowing wants to do the same if you've rowed for GB. I think that being at whatever level, junior. Yeah, so everyone will have a little number. I think the Olympic one, you get a little pin badge or something, maybe something similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that's kind of been lacking from that national team, because it's very high end. When you're there, you're in, and then when you're out, you're out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's pretty cool that they've been doing that.
Yeah, you can sort of see us having an interactive display here where you can go and type in your name or your number and pull up the profile of the person.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be really cool, yeah. Because sometimes also people who have rowed for their country, just because they may have not necessarily come away with a medal from the Olympics, they might also devalue their experience sometimes. But it's not that way at all. If you've rowed for your national team, it's a really big deal, and hopefully we can make people more proud of it. And I think having an interactive display like that would be great. I'll just look everyone up.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't get them off it.
Yeah, I need to have a special after hours pass or something.
Cool. So, a couple questions.
Yeah, we've had some questions that we've asked on Instagram that to our audience to kind of get a bit of a feel and feedback for the Rowing Museum. So one of the questions was about the online presence. Some people were surprised that something like the River and Rowing Museum exists in Henley. So are there steps that you're taking to be more present in the online sphere?
Yeah, I mean, market awareness is probably the biggest challenge we've got. So we've done some research on it, and if you look at local museums to us, so Reading Museum and Museum of English Royal Life, which you may not have been to, may not have heard of, people have heard of them more than they have us. And if you start then looking at things like Windsor or Legoland, we're nowhere to be seen. So we have to boost our presence. And the big challenge here really is one around marketing, because we can update the galleries and do all those bits I was talking about earlier. And that's fairly straightforward. That's just a list of tasks. The real challenge is how we get it in front of people. And so there's 2 groups of people we're going to target initially. So one is our home market is Henley. So that's real sort of classic hand-to-hand marketing. That's leafleting, flyering, targeted Facebook ads, all that sort of stuff to get in front of the town, because in the dark winter months where we are now, they're the people that will come out and support us. And then as it starts to open up, it'll be primarily families within an hour's drive of here who are our first target. We think there's about 1 million people in that bucket we can target. But to do that, the world we live in now, we have to have social media. We have to have paid advertising on those social media platforms. We have to think about what we're putting out across all those platforms, how often, when. We're going into A/B testing now, so 2 slightly different versions of the same advert and effectively play winner stays on, so we keep saying which one performs best. Through then to make sure that our website makes sense. We have online tickets, online shop, but also we actually it comes down to also doing interesting things, so we can shout about different things. Because if there's nothing going on here, then it doesn't matter how good you market it if people will see through it. So there's a big job to shout about the museum, and it's probably my main job really is to be present and be vocal about the place and try and control the narrative a little bit and push that narrative out there, because again, the directors here I don't think have done that necessarily, and I think in today's world, generally, if you're in leadership, you need to be visible and you need to be pushing the message. So I'll be doing a lot of that over the coming years.
Nice. Well, I've got some ideas that I'd like to push your way off air once we finish recording. So maybe there's something that they might be interested in taking on.
Absolutely.
Online's the future. We've done the same thing with our business. I'm not great at it, at the social media stuff, but I sort of noticed definitely a difference, like part of doing this and stuff and getting your name out there. I agree. I know it's another message from rowing: bosses boss and leaders lead. And I think, you have to be prepared to get stuck in and show people the way. And again, like we said before, I think if you show that you're part of the community of rowing, then I think that's really going to, I've seen it, that's a big thing in rowing. That's something that people respond to. Businesses that do well in rowing are ones that are run by rowers. Companies that come in and think there's some money to be made here, I'll slap a sticker on a t-shirt and you get them. They don't seem to tend to last that long. So I think that's a key that you guys have obviously locked in now already.
And also you tend to connect with people rather than businesses. So it's also, it couldn't be stated anymore, like the importance of having a personal brand and like having someone like yourself who's so heavily involved with rowing, like you actually care about the sport and you care about this place doing well. So that's a really big first step.
Yeah.
Cool. We've had another question, and I think that might be linked to the refurbishments that have been carried out here, but it read, why was the museum shut during the last 2 Henley weeks?
Well, I think we were open for this Henley. We were, because I came in my blazer. So we were just open. But we've been closed for 6 months while a load of refurbishment went on. So the museum... basically the required works and the preventative maintenance you should do on a building like this hadn't been done, and so effectively the roof was leaking. There was 14 buckets at one point, and you can't have a collection with a leaky building. You just can't. Like, as an accredited museum, there are certain standards we have to stick to ensure that the ergs and the boats and everything else deteriorate as slowly as possible, and if the building's leaking, that's a big red flag, so you can't do that. So decision was taken coming out of COVID that the museum isn't going to turn itself around without a significant bit of work. So trustees said, right, we're going to close. We'll fix the central roof we've got where the leaks are coming from. But as well as that, we're just going to put everything right that hadn't been put right. So as well as that, we converted building 2 over there from an education centre into office units. So we lease those out and help with the income side of things. We've completely redone all of our back-end CRM systems, all of our CCTV, our fire intruder alarms have all been redone. Loads of work done out in the front around landscaping bits and pieces. Hired a new director, like all sorts of bits and pieces that have gone in to get the place back in a position that I can come in now and actually run it. And we're just closing off the last few bits of that, but that's been the real reason behind it, because kind of we had to. We couldn't continue running it the way it was being run. So it was a big, brave decision. We've invested, like being blunt, millions of our own cash, and we can't do that forever. So this now has to work, and we have to turn it around.
I think that's also the exciting thing. Like, we're not sat here like, not much has changed, but please come down. It's like, no, a lot has changed. Like, a lot of money's been invested. A lot of things are in the works, stuff that's coming forward. I think that's like exactly like cool to send that message out.
I mean, we'll know we're getting it right when we see it's busy again. Might be able to hear now there's a school kicking around. We want that noise and that excitement and that buzz around the place, because it means there's more people that we can tell interesting stories to and inspire them to keep involved in the sport, hopefully.
So you said that you had living advent calendar from Henley being hosted at the museum here. Are there any other events for the community that you're planning out in the near future?
Well, obviously Boys in the Boat is coming out in January.
Oh yeah.
So we are hosting a screening of that for our friends. So we bought the entire cinema on the Saturday night. So we've got
a Regal Picture House?
Regal Picture House, yeah.
Absolutely.
So there you go. Yeah. So screen 1, that'll be us. Yeah. And we've got 150 of our friends who are coming down, and we just want to shout about the movie and about the sport of rowing, and then highlight the bits of the collection we've got here that are linked to the film. So as I mentioned at the start, George Pocock was a coach. We've got the letter he wrote when he was on the boat to Germany. We've got a wreath, which you probably can't see, but we've got a wreath over there that was awarded to the British double that won in 36, and loads of other bits and pieces of memorabilia from the event. So I think it's going to be quite huge for rowing in the UK, this film, because I don't think Mr. Clooney's messed around when he's put this together. So I think it's going to be a great story, and I think it's going to resonate with lots of people outside of rowing. So hopefully British rowing and the clubs are ready, and you can start sort of funneling people in. But certainly we think it's important to be there and use it as a springboard to shout about the collection.
I think it's fantastic that films like that are being made about the sport. More people need to find out about it, and obviously who's better to bring it into the spotlight than Mr. Clooney himself, right?
Yeah, they definitely, from what we've heard, obviously I know some friends and stuff have been involved in it. They didn't skimp on the rowing bits, and they've definitely put some hard work into that. And there's some of the people they brought in to like oversee it, very, successful rowers in their own right. So I think that's really exciting. It's not just going to be like, it's going to be a big part of it. It's going to be showcased, like rowing really is showcasing, just showcased in that film, which I think is exciting. It's not just a film about something else with a bit of rowing.
Yeah. It's always funny, these films like True Blue, Social Network, that as rowers you're watching it for that long shot where it's like, well, they know how to row, and then you get closer to the actors and like, well, you obviously don't know how to row. So like it's going to be fascinating to see how well the actors are rowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like always, obviously, they have to, there's a limit to how good they can get. But yeah, I was involved in a bit of that Social Network stuff as well, which was quite funny. But yeah, the long shots were all filmed at Henley with no actors.
Yeah.
And then, but again, I think for that one, they did a good job. But from what I've sort of heard from Boys in the Boat, it's going to be another level.
I wonder how much CGI they're going to use. Maybe they'll just take a video from the 1992 Barcelona pair and they'll just like CGI everyone's face onto Pinson and Redgrove's body.
They're going to use loads because they, it's no secret that they filmed down here on the Henley Reach, but it all needs to be in America or Germany. So presumably there's going to be CGI all over the place. Like
they
Henley come to life.
Molesey Boat Club got all put up as the German boat club.
Oh, is that right?
Up there, yeah, which is quite funny. So they had, I think at one point they were having to fly Nazi flags very briefly for shots and like take it down again, take it down. Those sorts of things. But yeah, no, I think like I agree. I think it'll be really good for the sport. There seems to definitely be a big buzz around that film.
Yeah.
I mean, we're part of British rowing community, but there's certainly a big buzz around.
Yeah, we put our tickets live for people to nab effectively, and they were gone within about 6 hours.
Yeah.
So
Wow, for rowing, that's crazy. Yeah, just to put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess we've just got some quick fire round questions to ask you. So I normally start by asking you, but out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, visited or rowed at or raced at, what are some of your favourites and why?
Calcutta Rowing Club was always pretty cool.
Wow.
So yeah, we got when I was at London, we got flown out there to race in the International Friendship Regatta against Calcutta, the Indian Army, Karachi Boat Club. Some of the vets from Molesey came out as well.
Karachi Boat Club.
That was amazing.
We've got an athlete from a Karachi Boat Club.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So that was awesome. That was just a week like nothing else. Just a total assault on the senses. Best hospitality I've ever had, and an amazing row. The boat, oh man, it was like a battleship is like the best way I can describe it. And just like the rigging was just all over the shop. So we ended up winning, and that was always good fun. But like, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle to get to the end of the week, but great fun. So Calcutta was great. Head of the Charles was always amazing. Like huge after party there. And where else? I'll tell you one of the best ones I went to. We did a race in Galicia in northern Spain. I think it's Spain, not Portugal. And just incredible. Like the expanse of water was so big that when you were rowing back, your peripheries were all water.
Wow.
Like it was weird. It was a really bizarre. I mean, it was a lake, but it was just enormous, and so it's quite a bizarre feeling to be rowing and not see the bank without having to properly look around and go for it. So that always stood out as a good one to row at.
I think there would still be some novice coxes that would like find a way to crash into the bank.
Yeah.
Awesome. My next question is: if you were to repeat one race or regatta again when you're 60 or 70, what would it be and why?
The one. Well, can I pick two?
You can pick as many as you like.
Be quick. So the one is at Wallingford. Wallingford Regatta, when they first built Dawn, it was still a 1,500 metre course. We were racing open eights, and we beat Leander, who I think we're racing a Star and Arrows. It might be Development Crew, and we were racing at London. But that was great because we were winning. But the hilarious part in that race was the cocks shouting, "We're in second," And then the bowman, just clear as a bell, just said, "I think you're fine. We're in first," with like 900 meters into this like absolute balls out race. Which stuck with us, and then we beat Leander, and everyone's obviously celebrating. So that was really cool. And the other one that stood out was racing. It's a really random one. I was meant to go to Ghent, but lost my passport, so I was one of those rowers that year. So couldn't go to Ghent. So ended up staying back in London, and we went to race at Poplar Regatta over at Docks.
Yeah.
And they'd raced in the morning, got beaten by all these schoolboys, and then they dropped me and this other guy into the afternoon. And it was great because everyone was just so downtrodden and just disappointed to lose to these kids. I remember going in there and being like, right, just gripping the crew and just be like, look, schoolboys have got one race plan, and that is go flat out from the start and hang on. I was like, so we're going to be down at 500, we're going to be level at a K, and we're going to win by a length. And that's exactly what panned out. And that was, it was great to be in that boat and sort of help make it happen.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome answer.
Yeah.
A question I usually ask is if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you really first caught the bug for rowing, what advice would you give that kid? And it doesn't have to be serious, or just anything that you think would help.
I'd say don't injure your back. Go and get it seen quickly. And do you know, weirdly, I probably would have backed myself more early doors.
Yeah.
Because I probably went for it a bit too late. So yeah, I think I'd probably say like just give it a crack early doors. That's still benefits of hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, like hopefully there was some, I ask all our guests that question. Hopefully there's some 14-year-old rowers now, and we can kind of give some of that information to that maybe takes a little bit longer to work out. But no, we've had that asked before, and I think that's a great one. Like, it's okay to have a bit of a dream, and it's okay to go for it. And some other people might laugh at you, but it's your dream.
But definitely, if you feel your back twinging, get it seen to quickly.
Yeah. Second that one.
Awesome. I've just got one last question, and that is, who are some of your rowing idols or people you've looked up to during or post your career?
So for me, when I got into rowing, so I started in 96, 7-ish. So that's the Redgrave Pinson era. Yeah. So that Sydney boat that's hanging there, that's my favourite thing in the collection, because that's totally hook, line and sinking me into the sport. So Redgrave and Pinson are probably the biggest sort of inspirations from a rowing point of view. But that four in itself, like, Tim Foster, arguably one of the best boat movers we've ever had in the squad ever.
A great bloke too.
Great bloke. And Cratler in the bow seat is just, a phenomenal athlete, as we all know, and clearly loves the sport and has done amazing things in it since then. So yeah, it's probably those two. And I think, the slightly cheesy answer is I'm always really inspired by those people that stay at the club coalface for decades at a time, stay on the committees and keep making it happen, because, the vast majority of people involved in the sport are volunteers, and the clubs are mini businesses, and they don't run without those volunteers putting the hours in. So when you see the old boys and girls that have been there for donkey's years and are doing their thing, I'm always quite inspired by that.
I don't think that's cheesy at all. Yeah. Rowing is nothing without its volunteers and all the people who create it into what it is, the community, and all those smiley faces that keep getting up out of bed each morning just to go out on the river and just shift the boats.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that answer as well. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Brilliant. I think, thank you so much for having us. It's been really interesting to talk to you about your plans for the museum. I'm personally very excited to see what's going to happen and to come here and keep visiting, hopefully with my own family one day.
Absolutely. Great. So thanks for having us. Do please come down and see us, and we'll give you the guided tour.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when as and when new things come up, we'll be happy to come down and have a look ourselves, just for our own pleasure, but also shout about what's going on. And if we can support you in any way, obviously we're keen to.
Great. Thanks very much.
And if at some point we can have you on again, I'd obviously love that as well. But as for today, I think that concludes everything for this episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.